Guys are great. Welcome back once again in this particular MetaMask clone project. In the last video we have written all the functionality in our pop-up page, how to create account, how to call the API, everything we have done in the last video. If you haven't watched the last video, make sure to watch it because that video is the most important part, because that's there we have built all the logic to make our MetaMask work. In this video we're going to work on the API section. We're going to build the API, the backend part of our MetaMask for storing the private key and the data. So this one is also very important. So this is where we left in the last video. Hope you guys have followed that. So this is all the document we have targeted. This is the provider, all of these things we have here: handler function, check balance, get open network, get selected network, set network, logging user, create user, open create, sign up, login. This is the endpoint we have built, log out, functions, go back, open import, import back, open activity, open assets, go home page, open import, add account, my functions, copy address, change account. So all of this function we have built in the last video. Hope you guys haven't forgot that. And this is the data we have. I'm just remove this one because I was testing for something else, but that's not relevant. This is what you have covered in the last video. Okay, looks good. And now I will close this one, and now we're going to start working on the API section. So here we have the API folder. In that you will have all of this data API. Inside that you will have this 3 folder: contract, control. Then we have the model. In that we have all these 3 model. Then we have the router. In that we have this 3 different router. So first we're going to start working with the routers, then model, then controller. Then we're going to work on the app, then we're going to work on the server. So click on this. Let's start working on the account router. And this one is going to be a very simple one. We have to write very few code in here. So we'll take the variable called express. We have to import that. Then we have to import our auth controller. So for the time being, just build the router. Later we're going to attach all the functions. Build all the functions. So this is coming for auth controller. Now we have to take the router. This is coming from express router. And now we have to simply build the router. So we're going to have the get method on this particular endpoint. So this is the endpoint we have built all account. I hope you guys have watched the last video. So this is what we're going to call on this particular function, and it will give us all the account we have in our database. Now we're going to call this post methods for create. And this is the function we're going to call it. And this is the endpoint we have. And these are the 2 endpoints we need in our account router. So simply export the router, and that's it. So that's the simple router, account router we have built. So we have express, auth controller, then we have the author, and these are the 2 endpoints we have built for getting all accounts and for creating account. So let's close this one. Now we have to work on the token router. Click on that, close this one, and click on the token router. And here we have to also build 2 endpoints. So we have to do the exact thing. We need express, and we need our auth controller. We need to construct the router, which is coming from express.router. And now we have to build the endpoint. So let's build it. We'll call it get method. And this will allow us to get all the tokens which are there in our database. And then we have to have a post method. So we can post the token in our database. And then simply export the router. And that's the only thing we have to write here. It's quite similar like the last one. We have to build these 2 functions endpoint. Okay, we're importing, close this one, come here. Now we have to work on the user router. Click on this, press, then we have to take the auth controller. When we'll take the express router, and then we have to build the endpoint. So first one is going to be the post one, because user will make a request, so it will be a sign up. And the next one is going to be the login, and it's also a post request. We'll say login, and then we have to simply export the router. So that's a fairly simple one. Looks pretty good to me. No issues we have so far, and looks pretty good. We have built this 2 endpoints with 2 function method, which is coming from auth control, and looks pretty good. Come here. So we are done with this router. Hope you guys have followed me. Now close this one, and now we have to work on the model. And again, I'm telling you that if you have any confusion, if you want to learn more about the API development, make sure to check this particular project. It's a 13-hour project. In that we have built the complete full-fledged API which has more features. So once you build this particular project, it will give you amazing idea. If you teach you every single thing about the security, data modeling, manipulating the data in the API backend, everything will be explained completely. Okay, so make sure after this project take that particular API course. This will teach you everything. That one is the most advanced version you can follow. Now we can follow on the model. So first we have to work on the account model. Click on that, and this one is also very simple one, because that's what we are using. We have mongoose. We'll come here, we'll create a mongoose schema, and this is the method we have, and this is two information we want to take, the private key and the address, and that's the only thing we have to do. We have to simply export that one, account and account schema, and we have to simply export the module, and that's pretty much. And that's the only thing we have to do to create a account model. Okay, fairly simple one. We are taking only these two data. Come here. Now we have to work on the token model. Close this, open the token model. To take three data from the user. So let's import the mongoose. Then we have to build the schema. We'll say token schema, new mongoose schema, and we'll take the name of the token, we'll take the address, and we'll take the symbol. So these are the three data we are taking from the user, and now we have to simply export the schema. So we'll say model.export token. So that's the only thing we have to take in the model. Looks pretty good. Okay, so far so good. Not a huge thing we have done here. Now come here. Now we have to work on the user model. Close this one, and user model is going to be the biggest one because we have to do the password check, then we have to hash the password. So this one is going to be the longer one, and if you want to know about the API authentication and development, make sure to check that course as well. Click on that. So the same thing we have to do here. We have to import the mongoose, then we have to take the schema model, and this is the package we are using because we have to encrypt the password and we have to store the encrypted password in our database. So we need this package. Let's build the schema, new mongoose schema, and this is the field we want. We want the name of the user. It's gonna type string, and it's a required field, and this is the error message. So this is the thing I've covered tons of times in my previous project, so I'm going to go a little faster here. So this one is the type string, and this is also the required field, and we'll make it unique. So every single unique email ID will be unique, and we have to convert it into a lowercase. Then we have to take the password from the user. Type is gonna be a string, required true, please provide your password. Then we'll take this password confirm, type string, required field, and this is the error message we have. Then we'll close that one, and then we'll take this validator. So this validator will only run at the time of password creation, sorry, account creation, not at the time of password change. So we'll simply validate the password with actual password is given, and this is how we can access with this keyword, and close this one, and we'll throw this error message if the password is not matched. Now we can come here. We have to store the address of the wallet, then we have to store the private key of the user, and this is the nomic we have as a string. So make sure to have to give the exact spelling because this is the exact spelling we have called in our APIs. If you mismatch the key pairs and the value pair, is not going to work. Looks pretty good. And now we have to build the methods because creating user is not simple as it is because we are encrypting the password, so we have to verify the password, all of the things we have to do. So let's build a method. So we'll call this user schema model, and that we have to call this pre-hook. We'll call the save. Again, I'm not going to get into details because I have already done that in the 30-hour course. So if you want to know more about it, you can follow that, but I'm going to use it very quickly here. We'll call this async function, and that we have to get this. Then we'll first only run this function if password was actually modified. So if the password is modified, then we have to call this function. We'll say if this not modified, then we have to return this, and we'll say has password cost 12, and we are using 12 because we have to encrypt the password, and it's always great idea that you have to encrypt the password and then store. Don't store the password as it is. If someone hack your database, they can have the access of the password and the email. So it's always better to encrypt that. So that's what we have to do. Then we have to delete the confirm password because that's not we want to store in our database. So we'll say undefined, and then we'll call the next middleware. So this is the first method we have created. Now come here, we have to call this pre. Again, it will run at the time of save, and we'll say if modify the password is new, then we have to return. Otherwise we have to take this password change at, and we have to change the date and set that in our database. So that's that one. Now we have to take this user schema pre-hook, and this will allow us to find out. So we'll say this point to the current query. So whatever query user are making in the API, we are doing this. So we'll say this dot find, and we'll say this active to false. So we have to display only those user are active. Means what will happen, that the way I have explained in the NFT marketplace API course, in that you can set the user active or deactive. So if user delete his account, we are just setting their active state to deactive in the database, but we are not actually deleting his data. So here we want to take those data which has an active, not delete it. So that's what I am doing exactly. Then call this next middleware. Now we can come here, we'll take this schema model, and we're going to build this current password method, and this will allow us to verify the password which is user is providing and the password we are getting from the database. So we'll call this candidate password, then we'll say user password. We'll return this await bcrypt, because this is the package we'll use to compare the password, because the password we have in the database, it's a encrypted form. Encrypted, and the password we are getting from the user, it's a normal password, so we have to match it, and that's how we can do it with the help of this package. So we'll call this user schema method, then we have to call this change password. So this will allow us to change whether the user have changed the password or not. We just build the function, and in that we have to do the check. So the timestamp, we have to pass the time. So we'll say this dot pass, so change get time, and we have this. Looks pretty good. Now we have to return this. So we'll check for the greater, and then we'll return this true or false. So by default we'll set this to false. Looks good. Now we can come here, we'll say user model schema. So we have to simply export the model so we can utilize it, and that's the entire thing. I know this one is pretty huge and a lot of things are going on here. I went a little faster here because the same thing I have covered tons of time in the project. So if you are interested in the API development, make sure to check that. That will give you a broader understanding that what logic we have implemented. And there is a tons of method I have covered in that. This is the very simple, only 2% I have covered what I have covered in the API. So that looks pretty good. Now looks fine to me. Let me come here, simply scroll. You can find all the courses, all the topics we have covered. So let me scroll all the way down to show you where it is. So you can watch this particular project. In that I have used the basic API structure. This will also teach you. And if you come back here, let me show you the course which I was talking about. I got amazing response on the course, so I would want you to have a look. So this is the hacking which I was working. Just remove that one, come back here, and this is the one. Okay, you can see we have in two parts, 6 plus 6 hour 40 minutes, and this one is 6 hour 5 minutes. It's a pretty huge. It will teach you everything which you have to know. So I want you to come and have a look. This will teach you everything which you need to know about the API development. Okay, so come and watch this. You will understand everything after completing this course. So we are done with this model. Come back here. So we are done with the router, we are done with the model, and now we have to work on the controller and build the actual function. So come back here, close this one, come back in the controller, and let's start working on it. Things. So we need the JWP token. Now we have to take the user model. We have to take the token model. We have to take the account model. Then come down, we'll take this variable called sign token, and this sign token we are using to create the authentication. So whenever a user will create his account or login, we'll send the token back to the browser, and on the base of that token we're going to verify that. So we'll say return jwp.sing. In that we'll take the id, process.in, then we'll take the expiry, and this environment variable we are getting for config file. Okay, there we have set the jwpt secret and jwp expire, and that's the one. Now we have to come here, we have to create the send token. User status code require response, then we'll take this token, we'll call the method sign token. In that we have to pass the ID, and here we'll take this cookie and build the cookie. So we'll take this expiry and we'll pass the date dot now plus the process dot cookie expiry date. We have to convert into a seconds. Now we'll come here, we'll take this HTTP only true, and we'll secure this one. So HTTP header port is equal to HTTPS. So it will both work in the HTTP and HTTPS. Now we have to remove the password from output, because that's not the ideal, that once someone create his account, you have to display the password as an output. So remove that one to undefined, and we have to send the status to success and the token, and we have the data. So in the data we have to send the user data and close that one. So that's the entire function for create and send token. So hope so far things are making sense to all of you guys. Now come down here, let's work on the sign up form. So we have built the sign in, we have built the token, and now we have to simply work on the sign up. It's going to be an async. It will take these three data: request, response, and next. So this is the three variable we have access whenever someone will make a request on the sign up endpoint. Then we'll call this const new user, we'll say await, we have the model, and then we have to call the create method, and we have to pass the data. So we'll pass the name. So this is the exact name, the key pair we have defined in the model. So that's the one thing we have to call. We have the name, we have the email, and we have the password. We have the password confirm, we have the address, we have the private key, and the last one is the nomic. All this data we are getting from the request body, and that looks pretty fine. So this will create the user in our database. Now we'll call this create send token, and we have to pass the data, so it will send the token back to the user. So this is the sign up form, sign up function we have. Now we have to work on the login. In that we're going to take this 3, because this 3 data we have available. Well, simply come here, we'll say take this 2 data from the user input. Then we have to simply check for some conditions. So we'll say check if email and password exist, means we have in the database. We'll call this email is there, password is there. If the user has not provided these 2 things in the input and it making a request, then we have to throw this error message. We'll say status 400, and we'll say status fail, and we have to send the message that please provide email and password. So that's the first check we are doing. Now we can come here, we'll take this check if user exists and password is correct, and this is going to be happen in our backend part. So we'll take this user await, we'll call our model, and we'll call this find by 1. So the only thing we have to match the user data with the user data which he providing is email. So we'll take the email and we want to match it. We'll say if user is not there, then we have to call this one. This is the method we have built in our user model, and that's what we are passing. So it will compare the password which user is providing and the password we have in the database, and then we have to simply send the response. So if stated is failed because the password and the database password is not matching, so we'll say incorrect email or password. Okay, so that's the second check we are doing. Now come back to the third one. We'll say if everything okay, then we have to simply send the token and user can log in. We'll say create send token, and we have to pass all of this data. So that's the logging functionality. Pretty simple. Again, if you want to learn more about this, more advanced, then follow that API course. Now we can call this all token, and this one is a very simple one. It will return the entire tokens we have in the database. It will have this request and next. Then we'll call this token, and we have the model. In that we have to call this find method, and we have to send the response. So it will give us all the token. 200 means okay, status success, and we have to send the data to the tokens. So this is get all token we have. We'll come here, we'll take this add token, we'll provide this data, and then we'll say create token and we'll call the method, and then we have to call the create and we have to pass the data. So we'll say name, then we have to pass the address, and we have to pass the symbol. And once we're done with that, then we have to send the response back, because once the data is created in the database, it's 201 for the create. It will say success and we'll send the data back. So in the data we can send the created token, and that's it. Pretty simple. Now we can come here, we'll type the all account. So this will give us all the account which user have stored in the database. So we'll say async request respond next. We'll say const account await account find. Then we have to simply send the request, and status is success, and this will return the all the addresses, and looks good. Then we have to build the create account function. We have the access of this data. Then we'll say account await account.create, and we have to pass the data, private key, we have to pass the address, we have to pass the, that's it. Then we have to simply send the response back to the user. Pretty simple. Status 201 for create, and we'll say status success, and the data is going to be our account, and close this one. Looks good. And that's the entire function we have to write in our auth controller. So hope things are making sense. We have imported this, then we have built our sign token, then we have this create send token, then we have the sign up, then we have the login, then we have the all token, we have the add token, then we have all account, then we have create account, and that's pretty much. So far so good, no issue we have in the code. And again, come and watch this will give you a better idea about the API coding, and you can follow this project as well after this. So we have this one 6 hour long, you can follow this as well. Come back here, and we have done with this controller. Now we can done with the entire API folder. We have this model, we have the router, close this one, and now we can start working on app.js file. So this is the file we have to work. Click on the app.js file, and let's import couple of packages and files. So we'll export the express, then we have to import the cross, and we have already installed all the packages at the start. Then we have to import the user router, because we have to make a request. Then we have to import the token router, then we have to import the account router, and we have to build the middleware app express. Then we have to call this express.json, so we can able to put the data into our database, otherwise it will not work. And here you can set the limit, so I will say 100 KB in every single request. 100 KB data I want them to upload. Then we have to build this cross, and we can set the options. So here you can define options, but I want this to be called in any domain, so that's why we are giving the star. Then we can come here, we'll take this router, and let's build the router. So this is the endpoint we are building for user, this is the endpoint for tokens, and this one is the endpoint we have for the accounts. Down here, and we have to simply export the module app, so we can easily able to call this model in our server file. So it looks pretty good. So far everything's looking good. We have the packages, we have the models, we have the middleware and the router and this app. Now come here, go to the close this one. Now we have this server config file. Let's start working on this. Okay, we have to configure this, and you can come and you can check all of these courses which I have explained here in detail how you can do it. So in that I have explained that how you can get your own database keys and password extensively in detail, so you can follow that. But let me show you. Click on this, and I will type mongoose not validated, remove this one. Okay, MongoDB. Click on this, then you will come to this, and here you will find about this MongoDB everything in detail. So that looks pretty good to me. Now make sure to create your account. I have already done that, so I'm going to log in. You can simply do it by GitHub or Google. I'll click on Google because I have mine account. So here you can see that I'm here back into my MongoDB server. I click on this create, and here you will have multiple options. You can serverless, and you can call a shared server. So some are free, some are paid, so you have to take it one. If you really want to go for a upgrade plan, then you have to pay money for that. But otherwise, but in this project we're going to take the free one. So you can see I have to go to the share, and it's free for cluster, and it's not going to create it, and it will not allow me to create because I already have a free cluster running on my application. So in your case, you will have an option to create, find out all the informations. You can see it gives you the 512 MB of storage, but you can upgrade if you think you need. But let's click on this create cluster, and you have to do that as well. Create cluster, and you can see it's throwing me an error because I already have a free cluster. So that's a fairly easy process. All you have to do is to follow the process which they will ask you to do, and at the end it will ask you to create your username and password. So make sure to create the username and password and save it, because that's what we're going to use it in a project. And again, I linked the video in which I have explained in the I put in the description, so you can follow that and you can know how to do that. So that looks pretty fine to me. I cannot create that one. So there is the message I'm getting. So what I will do is, once you will create your cluster, you will have your password and the username, and this is the exact interface you will get. And once you get that, you have to click on this browser. Here you will find all the data you will create in your API. As you can see, I have created these two resources, user and NFT, and here I have all of this data which I have created on my endpoints when I was testing this particular API. So now this is the user, and this is the one we have. Looks pretty good to me. Now I'll come back here, go back, and now we have to build the connection. So go back here. Here we have to come and we have to click on this connect, and we have to get the string for our database. So this is the one which you have to click. I have explained extensively all of these methods, all of these tools, so you can follow that. Click on this, and this is the one we need. Simply grab this one particular entire string. Okay, so this is what you have to do. You have to get your password string, all of that. Close this one, and now you are ready with the data. Okay, so make sure to come and have a look on these particular one in that I've explained extensively. That's why I'm going a little faster here, because these going to be the same old repetitive thing which I don't want to do it. So make sure to do the exact configuration things. You have to paste your database string, and you have to paste your database password. Make sure to make the password keyword small, a capital, and you have to change the username with your username which you have provided in your database. Close this one, and now so here we are in the server file, and now let's start working on our server file and build all the logic connecting with the database. So we need to import the mongoose, then we have to import the don because we have to read our config file, then we have to provide the file path, then we have to take the app variable which is coming from the app file. Now we have to build the connection to our database. So process.env, and here we have this replace will password process.env, and the password we have to pass. So this is the string we have built. Again, I have covered this so many times, so I'm going a little faster, and you have to do the exact thing. If you want to know more deep about this, you can follow that. Then we'll take the mongoose, and we have to do this connect, and we have to follow this. We have to provide this variable user create index true, and we have the user find and modify false. Close this one, and we have to take the response, console log out that database connection successfully. Then we'll take the port initially by 3000. Then we're going to call this app.listen port, and it will have the console log that app running on port 3000, and we'll pass the port variable. Close this one. Looks pretty good. And that's the only thing we have to do here. Pretty simple. So we have taken the packages, then we have configured. Here we have built the properties for the mongoose, and then we are simply running our application. That's very simple. And here you can see this is my .config file. So I hope you guys have followed and you have got your string and the passwords. So it looks fine to me here. And that's the only thing you have to do in our Chrome API. And that's the only thing you have to do for the API. So now what I can do is, let me start the application and let me show you. If you look at the packages and file, we have already installed the packages. If you haven't installed that, make sure to install. Get into the Chrome API file and install all these packages. I have that one. And this is the command we have to write. So now we have to run the command called start, because that will start our server. So first we have to get into our CD Chrome API folder, and now we have to run the start script. And you can see that our application is running fine. It's also database successfully connected, and the application is running on like 3000 port. Everything's working fine. So simply close this one, stop the application from running. So our API is working fine. You can see all the routers, everything's looking good. So I'm going to stop the API and simply check one more time. Things looks pretty good. This is the model, all the pages we have worked, and this is the entire controller. Close this one. This is the app.js, this is the server.js file, and this is the configuration. So this is what we have covered in this particular video, and I believe that you guys have got an idea that what are the things you have to do. We have built the entire API with functionality, router, model, controller, and we have also configured our .env file database. So things are pretty simple and clear to all of you guys. If you still have any confusion in doubt, do let me know in the comment section. In the next video, we're going to write the CSS for our UI part. We follow the utility class model. So we'll build the entire CSS, and all we have to do is to simply plug those CSS classes in the HTML file, and we'll have the styling. And this is what styling structure we follow when we use any libraries like Tailwind CSS, Bootstrap. So that's what we do in there, and that's the structure we can follow here as well. But instead of using the library, we're going to use our own custom class we're going to write in the next video. So let's move to that.